What's up, middle school students? My name's Carol. I'm over at the River City campus if we haven't had the chance to meet yet. This week we're starting a new series called This or That, where we're diving into the topic of comparison. Now, by this point in your middle school careers, you've probably been taught a little bit about different measuring systems. In Europe, the standard measuring system is called the metric system. So there, people use things like grams, meters, and liters to measure distance, weight, and more. So in the US, we measure distance with inches, feet, miles, and things like tablespoons, teaspoons, and ounces for other measurements. Now, while we might have different standards for measuring things like how much flour we put into a cake or how many miles it is to your best friend's house, there's one standard of measurement that all people use, and that is the measure of comparison. Now, comparison is simply when we measure something about ourselves against something about someone else. So like, for example, you think this pair of sneakers is super cool until you see that pair of sneakers on someone in your small group. Or you think that this outfit that you picked out is so cute until you see that outfit on someone else and you kind of start to second guess yourself. Or you think that this grade that you got on your paper is really good until you see that grade that someone else got. See what I mean? Comparison is the way we measure this on our lives against that in someone else's life. And it probably affects more of our lives than we even realize. But here's the thing about comparison. It can lead us to believe things that just aren't true, not only about ourselves, but also about others. When we compare ourselves to others, we start to believe that their lives are better than our lives in some way, shape, or form. We can kind of see that when we see how many followers someone else has on Instagram or TikTok, or, someone's better at a sport than you, or someone got to take that girl or guy you really liked to the school dance, or someone has more friends than you could ever even dream of having. So because of comparison, we start to believe that their lives are pretty much perfect. They have everything they could ever want, everything we could ever want. And because of that, we assume that their lives are amazing, even though we may know that's not true because no one's life is actually perfect. The comparison still leaves us feeling like our this will never measure up to their that, whatever it is. And when that happens, it leads to a few different things. For some of us, it leads to disappointment. We're disappointed that we don't have what they have, or we wonder why they got to have the cool new house, or the starting spot on the team, or the happy family. We think, why not me? Why don't I deserve good things? Some people get frustrated when they're in that cycle of comparison. We just don't think it's fair. Again, we deserve to have the nice things or the cool stuff or the big friend group or the happy family. I deserve that. But the fact is that someone else has that, what we want, what we think we deserve, and it doesn't feel fair and we kind of get mad. Or maybe for you, the feeling of comparison brings into your life, makes you feel like it's hopeless. Not only do you see something in someone else's life that you want, but you now feel like you'll never have it. You feel like there's nothing you can do to achieve or get what you want, and you start to feel hopeless. Or maybe in some way, comparison motivates you. It makes you work harder, push harder, and do anything in your power to get what you want. That could mean staying up all night studying and being completely exhausted at school the next day, or pushing yourself even harder at practice and then running more drills when you get home. By the time the game comes around, you're exhausted. And we know that working hard and pushing yourself isn't a bad thing unless comparison is the reason that's motivating it. Or maybe when you compare yourself to others, you actually feel really good about yourself. You might even think that you're better than someone else, that you're more deserving of what you have than they are anyway. You might look down on others because you feel that your life looks pretty good in comparison. And regardless of how comparison makes you feel about yourself or someone else, here's the thing, it never really takes you anywhere. As soon as you reach the thing that you want, as soon as you go from your this to their that, you're gonna find something else to compare. It's never enough. The cycle never ends. And you end up struggling with those same feelings of disappointment, frustration, hopelessness, and more over and over and over and over again. I don't know about you, but this endless cycle of comparison can be super draining. I know for me, I used to really struggle, and I still do, with people that I see on Instagram, people doing the thing that I want to do or traveling to the places I want to go. Not right now because we're all stuck at home, but it's still draining. It's exhausting, feeling like you're never going to amount to what you see or people that are in your life or people in school. It's exhausting. And quite often it feels like there's no way to kind of break that cycle because once, like what we said, once you start comparing and you get that thing, you're just going to find something else. So it just repeats. It's a vicious cycle. Luckily, though, there is a way to start to break down that cycle and stop ourselves from falling into that endless loop of comparison. And the passage that we're going to highlight today is a passage from Paul. Now, Paul was a leader in the spread of the Christian faith, and he often wrote letters to encourage believers in the churches that he would visit in all the different areas. In the letter we're going to look at today, Paul addressed issues born out of comparison to a group of church members in a city called Corinth. And so here's what he said. I don't dare compare myself with those who praise themselves. I'm not that kind of person. They measure themselves by themselves. They compare themselves with themselves. When they do that, they are not wise. And that's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12. Even though Paul was specifically talking about false teachers who were bragging about their spirituality, the same truth applies to us today. Basically, Paul's saying, listen, comparing yourself to other people, it stinks. It's not smart, it's not wise, and it's not helpful. So let's not do it, okay? And why did he say that? Well, because I think Paul wanted us to know that when we compare ourselves to each other, we're using the wrong measurement. When we hold our real life up to someone else's life on social media, when we look at that highlight reel that they've curated on their Instagram, when we compare the way our family looks to the way another family looks, when we look at what we have in comparison to what someone else has, we'll always end up on the losing end. And that's because we're looking in the wrong place. And I know this is true not only because of the way comparison makes us feel, but because something else that Paul said in the very same letter. And this is going to be in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. He says, when people commend or compliment or praise themselves, it doesn't count for much. The important thing is for the Lord to commend them. It's not about how we measure up in comparison to other people. It's about how our this stands in how God sees us. That is our standard. That is the place we can look to see where we measure up. And the good news is that God doesn't compare us to others. It's not about how we measure up in comparison to other people. It's not about how our this stands in comparison to their that. It doesn't count for much. It's about how God measures us. That's our standard. The place that we can look to see how we measure up. And the good news is this, that God doesn't compare you to others. He doesn't. We can look at the way Jesus treated people while he was here on earth as proof of how God sees us today. Jesus didn't rank the people around him from best to worst. He didn't compare one single person to his own perfection. He never did that. Instead, he turned the whole system upside down, basing the way he sees all people on one thing and one thing only, and that is God's love. See, God isn't using the people around you as some sort of measuring stick to determine how good you are or your worth or your value. Instead, he is simply looking at you through his eyes. He's seeing your life through his love, and that is a place you will always measure up. Since God doesn't compare you to others, then what can we do to stop comparing ourselves? There's one more thing I want to share with you, and that's found in Proverbs. And that is in chapter 4, verses 23. And it says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Comparison starts in our hearts. It starts because something makes us feel unhappy with this in our lives when we see that in someone else's life. So if we want to avoid that feeling, we have to stop it where it starts, and that is in our hearts. As this proverb says, we have to guard our hearts. And so here are some tangible ways that you can do that. Number one, pay attention to your feelings. Notice the way your mood or your outlook changes when you start to compare yourself to someone else. Do you feel disappointed, frustrated, angry, hopeless, anxious? These feelings may be clues that you're heading down the path of comparison, and they're a signal that you need to guard your heart. Number 2, find out what's fueling it. What are you looking at, thinking, reading, watching when you start to feel those feelings? Is it a post on social media, a TV show, a circumstance in your life that you wish was different? If it's something in your control, take a step away from it. That might mean taking a break from Instagram. I've done that. Or taking a break from TikTok. Or, hey, I'm gonna stop watching this show on Netflix because it's making me second guess myself. Take a step to guard your heart from the things that cause you to compare. And if it's something you can't control, talk to someone about it. Maybe you're unhappy with your home life, or have a friend you're jealous of, or wish you'd gotten that spot that you were really hoping for on the team. Things like that can cause you to compare. Your small group leader is a great person to help you identify steps that you can take to change and guard your heart in those areas. And number 3, and my personal favorite, is to celebrate what you do have. Instead of filling your heart with comparison, fill it with acknowledgement of the things you do have, the things that you're thankful for, the things that you like about yourself and your life. And again, the way that God sees you is a great place to start. Make a list of the things that He sees in you. Send an encouraging text to someone you appreciate. Or write down all the things that you're grateful for in your life. When you're tempted to compare, fill that space in your heart with gratitude. Fill it with something that reminds you of the truth that God does not compare you to others. If you're sitting here thinking that you're the only person struggling with comparing yourself to others, it's just not true. Every single one of us, your leaders, your small group leaders, your friends, your teachers, your parents, we all compare ourselves. We do. It's something that we unconsciously do, but the good thing is we don't have to struggle alone. One of the reasons we have small groups is to give you a space to talk about these things and to really process how you're feeling and to become more aware of those feelings and what to do to help them. So as you go into your small group, I want you to think about this question. When I'm comparing myself to others, how do I usually feel? So we're going to pray it out. And wherever you are, whether you're watching this on the day of your small group or beforehand, I hope you guys have a great week. God, we just thank you. We thank you for the love of Jesus and who you say we are, God. I know for many of us, the struggle of comparison is something that sometimes feels very hard to beat, God, but, we are not defined by how, comparison makes us feel, God. We are defined by your love and who you say that we are. You say that we are sons and daughters of the Most High, and I know that resting in that is hard. So God, as these middle school students go out into school, whether virtually or in person this week, God, that you would remind them that they are not compared to others in your eyes, God, that they are just perfect the way that they are. There's nothing that they can do to earn or lose that love, God. Thank you for sending your son and for the sacrifice that he made for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, I hope you have a great week, whether, again, that's in virtual school or in person. Thank you for checking out the YouTube channel. Share this video with your friends if you think it's something that will help them. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you next week.